Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Are you taking the right steps to ensure the future of your beef cattle business? From finances and taxes to estate planning, we're tackling the topics that matter most to the sustainability of your family operation.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us. Farming and ranching isn't just a way of life. They're businesses that require careful planning and skilled management to ensure long-term success. Beyond the day-to-day work, cattle producers must also think about the future, from managing finances and navigating taxes to positioning their operation for profitability for the next generation. I'm here with a knowledgeable group of people who can shed some light on this important topic. First, we have Mark Isley, a rancher from Wyoming who also served as 2024 president of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Next is Kent Backus, executive director of government affairs for NCBA. And our final panelist is Jeff McGee. He's a cattle producer from Mississippi who also served as the 2024 chair of NCBA's Tax and Credit Committee. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on this show today to talk about a very, very important topic. I want to begin just conceptually for a minute, and the fact of the matter is there is a lot that goes into running a profitable cattle business, but beyond annual operating profits, what does it look like to treat cattle ranching and farming as a business? Mark?
Well, you have to make sure you separate the lifestyle from the business. It is still a business. If you want to enjoy the lifestyle, you have to take care of the business. So that means planning, means preparation, and bring your partners, family, or employees into the operation so everybody's up to speed.
That's great. Jeff, what would you add?
From a cow-calf perspective, they can't all be your pets. You have to treat the animals as a piece of equipment, which is what they are on paper. And so you have to keep records on the piece of equipment. Equipment breaks down. When it breaks down, you have two options. You either fix it or you get rid of it.
That's right. That's a great point. I've had people tell me before not to name a cow for that reason. It's a number, not a name. You don't see hog producers naming their pigs, right? Kent, what would you add?
Well, I would just say that, when it comes to the business aspect of it, it's just like everything else. It's about the relationships and making sure you have a tax preparer that you trust, just like you would your attorney, and also just making sure on the finance side that you've got good relationships with all of your lenders. It's important that you have those records and that you're able to have a good assessment of the value of your business, your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you may need some help.
Jeff, let's come back to you. You prompted a question relative to just objectivity, right? And our business is filled with lots of tradition and lots of emotion, quite honestly. How do we separate that from the business aspects of our business?
Well, like I said, you have to get away from the pet mentality, okay? These animals that's your business. You're trying to produce income. They have to work. They have to, from the cow-calf, they have to calve every year. Will they rebreed every year? Will they raise a good calf or a bad calf? So you have to keep records to keep up with that.
Mark, you come from Western ranching heritage. How do you balance the tradition and emotion with the financial and business aspects of your operation?
The reality is you can't make decisions if you don't have the numbers. If you don't have the knowledge in front of you, you can't make good informed decisions. So we try to keep good records on our cattle. We ID them, we run through that process. We're in some programs that becomes mandatory anyway, and we really like that a lot. And everybody is cross-trained on that, so we understand numbers first, the decisions come after that.
That's good. Ken, I think you mentioned the words business plan, and I want to start with that and say, how can a well-structured business plan not only help an operation make an annual profit, but actually set itself up for long-term success? So we're not just surviving, we're actually positioning our business to thrive.
That's right. Well, and just like I think just like all the other aspects of your operation, where you have variables, the weather changes, input cost change. If you have a business plan and you know the goals of where you're trying to go, then it helps you stay on track, because there's a lot of distractions that are out there. But it also lets you know kind of the health of your business and how to gauge that. These are multi-year plans, these are annual reviews, but it's also just regular checks with the folks that help run your business to make sure that everybody's on the same page, you're all going in the same direction, and everybody has access to the information they need to make the best choices.
Mark, what does business planning look like for your operation?
It's a great question. I think Kent touched on something really important. You got to have goals. It's your short term, maybe 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Where are you going to be at? Are you going to pay some things down? You're going to pay some things off? Are you going to invest to improve the operation? And so that record keeping, in addition to that, planning is important. We have folks, my family, that actually keeps those records, and they understand what they have to keep. We work closely with our tax professional, our estate planner, those kind of things. It's kind of all rolled into one. They're separate entities, but they ultimately work together.
I'm guessing, Jeff, your history as a CPA, you've seen lots of very good and some not so good business plans. What would you add?
As a numbers man, if you formulate a business plan on paper and it won't work on paper, it's not going to work in the pasture. If you formulate a business plan that you can make it work on paper, you work that plan, you follow up on it. There's an old saying, plan your work, work your plan.
It's good guidance. And you've all mentioned to some level, I think, Mark, you just shared it a moment ago, the importance of data and making data-driven decisions. And in order to make data-driven decisions, you first have to capture data. So give us your thoughts on data-driven decision making.
Well, we do it for a lot of the day-to-day stuff. You know, what kind of materials and supplies are we using? What are they costing us? Do we pre-plan those purchases? If they're larger, how do we depreciate them? Do we accelerate that, or do we not? That's why the tax code is so important, and that keeps changing. So we've had a moving goalpost to hit. We'd like some certainty in that. That is a huge help. Then you have to collect that data, either write it down or put it in your electronic device, and then transpose it, put it together, get those numbers in front of you, and then share those, work those with your accountant and your tax preparer.
Jeff, do you have any thoughts relative to either good ways to capture data or good ways to analyze and utilize that data and turning it into valuable decisions?
I don't have any ways of capturing it other than manually.
Yeah.
I'm not electronic yet. So as I alluded to earlier, you have to keep records on those cows from the cow-calf perspective. Is that cow producing a calf every year? Is it producing a good calf every year? And so
that's critical, isn't it?
It is very critical.
Thank you so much. This is a great discussion, but we're only beginning, and still to come, we'll talk taxes and how without proper planning, taxes can put your operation at risk for the next generation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we discuss planning for the future of your cattle operation. So I'm curious, what are some of the greatest misconceptions producers have about estate taxes, and how might those misperceptions actually cost them? Jeff, you want to begin?
Sure. The greatest misconception is that estate taxes will never apply to me.
Okay.
They only apply to the billionaires. What can those misconceptions cost? They can cost you the ranch in the end.
Tell us more, Mark.
He's absolutely right on this. A lot of folks think, well, that's only a big outfit's problem. And in this day and age, when the value of assets, land, cattle, machinery has accelerated so much for whatever reason, inflation, et cetera. You may find yourself in a tax bracket you were unexpected, and then you find out that you're behind on the tax planning game. You don't have your things in place to do a good job, and there'll be reparations and repercussions for that.
Let's talk tax law changes. There have been some recent tax law changes, and I suspect there may be some more in the future. Kent, from a Washington, D.C. standpoint, tell us what you know there.
Well, obviously, we keep a very close eye on what's happening in Congress, and the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that was also known as the Trump tax cuts. A lot of those are set to expire at the end of 2025. For NCBA, this is a top priority, is making sure that we can continue to benefit from a lot of those tools. It's things like estate tax relief, but a lot of the important expensing tools that our producers use. There's never a one-size-fits-all plan for cattle operations. So we need to make sure that there's many of those tools available so that you can customize that based on your plan and your goals, and to make sure that your operation can benefit the most.
And what should producers be doing to help you move that forward in D.C.?
Well, Congress is right now, they are starting the process of writing a big tax package, and it's going to be expensive. We know that. So they're looking at cuts. They're looking at where they need to scale back. We are pushing hard for a full repeal of the death tax. That's a heavy lift. It truly is. But that is something that we need. We need everyone out there to engage with their members of Congress. Death tax is the big priority for us, but we also need to protect important things like the 199A small business deduction and 179 expensing, bonus depreciation. Those are all very important tools that we need to make sure that our producers have access to. And so we need them to engage with Congress to make sure they understand just how important this is for us in the countryside.
That's a great challenge. What are the kinds of tax incentives or even government programs that you believe producers should be taking advantage of, Mark?
Well, almost all the above that Ken has talked about, because it's not just for the ranchers and the farmers, it's also a decision that affects local businesses and local economies, especially rural economies, because if you go in and buy equipment, buy supplies, those sort of things that you need, that's a business for them. And if you look at how economics roll, that might be a 3 to 5 turnover in a local economy. That's what helps keep them flourished. It's what helps keep them vibrant. And so we have to look at those things in addition to just ourselves. So, but obviously, the conservation programs, they all require some form of actual material to accomplish. So there's benefits back and forth.
Any other comments, Ken, about what producers should be taking advantage of?
Yeah, I mean, you look at a lot of businesses, just in general, are C corps. They're corporations, and they do that for their own tax benefits. And they have a lower tax rate than most of the small businesses that are out there. Section 199A is a very important one because it allows that deduction on pass-through income up to 20%, and that's a big incentive. That really does, in many ways, level the playing field for a lot of our producers. And without that, many of them may have to convert to either be a C Corp or find other ways to protect their income. So that's one of the big tools that's out there. When you look at the other expensing things, it's 179 has been a really good way for producers to make those investments, to buy equipment, to make those capital investments, but also just making sure that depreciation schedules are not so stretched out that you're stuck with equipment and other things for a long time. Having that bonus depreciation where you can expense a lot of it up front, it makes the difference in whether you're going to be able to expand and improve your operation and remain competitive.
That's a great point. Jeff, I want to lean into your role as a tax professional and a CPA. What should a producer like me or Mark be asking our tax professionals to make certain we're getting the right type of guidance?
That's a tough one. The first question I would ask is, do you have a lot of ranchers and farmers in your client base? Okay. If so, they're going to be familiar with some of the unique issues that are impacted the farmers and ranchers. Yeah. And so they'll be, again, more equipped to deal with it.
That's good. Mark, what would you ask?
Boy, that's a great point, because I've actually had to change my tax preparers because they were unfamiliar, and I actually had to walk them through some of the nuances to accomplish that. So that's a really good point. You need to have someone who understands the profession and the business and the need for change in the operation to make it more efficient. Absolutely.
That's great. Again, a great discussion with some tremendous insights. Thank you so much. And when we come back, we're going to continue our discussion of some of the steps you should take to ensure the future of your own beef cattle operation. Stay with us.
Grazing and pasture management is really the critical first step in our cow-calf operation. Without good quality pastures, good quality forage, it'd be really tough to make it with a cow-calf operation.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll be part of the nation's oldest and largest national cattle industry organization that has a professional team working in Washington, D.C. on issues that matter to cattle-producing families nationwide. Don't stay on the sidelines. Make your voice heard by joining NCBA today at the website ncba.org.
Welcome back as we continue with our group of panelists. Gentlemen, I'd like to talk next about succession planning because the statistics are clear and there's a lot of both farming and ranching operations that are going to change hands over the next 6, 8, 10 years. In terms of succession planning, Jeff, what makes succession planning so difficult and what are the biggest barriers for families engaging in succession planning discussions?
Those struggles and barriers are one and the same.
Okay.
Procrastination. Why do people procrastinate? They don't want to make any of the family members mad. It's going to happen. People are going to disagree, but you got to deal with it.
Mark, why do you think folks tend not to embrace that conversation?
Well, I think partly it's generational. There's some guys that always felt that their bank account, their cow numbers, and their land size should be held quietly and privately. Okay. And sometimes they don't even want to share that with their families. And the reality is you've got to have those discussions. And you have to figure out what's fair and equitable. They're not always the same thing. Mm-hmm. And you have to start the discussions early because the longer you wait, the more painful it becomes. Mm-hmm. And one of the most painful things I see, and I see it across the country, is where the 80-year-old dad is gone away and the 60-year-old son doesn't have a clue where to start or where to begin because none of that was passed on. He should have started that process earlier, and if not, he should have figured out a different set of successors. And that's really a difficult reality, but it's the reality they have to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point. Kent, what do you see from a broad perspective in the industry?
I think it was very educational for us. We conducted a nationwide tax survey. Had over 1,200 responses, and a lot of those were NCBA members and cattle producers in general. One of the clear things we asked about was succession. And is this a part of your plan? Do you have a plan? Are you planning to exit the industry? If so, do you have a plan in place? And some of the results showed that there's a lot of producers out there who are planning to leave, but they haven't made that plan just yet. And when you consider all of that entails, that's a lot on their families and their loved ones. And also to just stresses the importance of having that plan and having those conversations.
I remember the good conversation we had with the Brown family a number of years ago as they planned their succession process. And I remember Rob telling me he had to buy the ranch again from his dad because his dad had an untimely death and was not prepared. And he made the comment that he and Peggy wanted to keep the ranch in the family and the family in the ranch. And I always thought that was quite a quote. Jeff, how do you balance between managing both the ranching operation and the family relationships through that succession planning process?
One word, communication. You've got to get everybody on board. It's imperative.
Mark, what would you guide people to make certain you're making good objective decisions about the ranching business, but not alienating family members in the process?
You have to get them on board. You have to communicate, like Jeff says, and talk about what your goals or plans are. Am I going to start stepping away when I get older? Who of you are interested in taking over? What strength do you have? Are you with machinery or with livestock? You want a farming operation? Tell me what portion you'd like to oversee, and see if we can capitalize on those strengths and overlap and protect for some weaknesses. And that was a very blunt, very direct discussion I had. We did it with our attorneys, so we could talk about the succession plan as well as the business plan moving forward.
I'm curious, you mentioned a comment a minute ago that sparked my interest in saying, what happens if that next generation isn't prepared? Or maybe a better question is, what can folks do to make certain that the next generation is well equipped and well prepared to take a hold of the reins when that time comes?
Unfortunately, and fortunately maybe, I had a vast amount of experience this because I've through several different hours. You have to be ready to think, and I hate to use the cliche, but you've got to start thinking out of the box. Do you want the ranch to continue as an entity? Well, maybe you should be looking at things that perhaps a land trust, an easement, a conservation easement would be one. If not, you need to start finding out of the family successors. That's actually where I came into mine. Right. And they basically trained me up through years and taught me what worked and what didn't work. And that was hugely successful. And then they also helped basically train up my kids. Grass, cows, genetics. Wow. And so I was really grateful. My parents both came from ranching families, but this experience for us made us really have to get our act together, so to speak. And there were unforeseen circumstances that accelerated mine personally because I had a health issue and I thought I had all the time in the world to plan, all the time in the world to do succession. I realized it didn't. I made it through it, everything was fine, but we sped that timeline up and immediately started delegating duties, options, executors, the whole thing. And it was not really as painful as I thought once we actually started the discussion.
Yeah, that is great guidance. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story. Now, when we come back, we'll wrap up our show right after this.
You always know where this one is. But what about this one? Or this one? Imagine knowing your machines the way you know your cattle, where they are and what they need. Data like that could make a difference. You can make better decisions for more efficiency, consistency, productivity. That's the power of technology. Get started with Operations Center today.
Did you know you can get reimbursed for attending cattle industry educational events? The Rancher Resilience Grant helps cattle producers attend valuable programs such as Cattlemen's College and Stockmanship and Stewardship training sessions. Local, state, and national events qualify for the grant, and successful applicants can receive money back to help cover registration fees and hotel expenses. To apply for the Rancher Resilience Grant, go to ncba.org and click on the Producer tab.
Welcome back. As we wrap up our program, I'd like to give each of our panelists a moment to share some final words of wisdom. Jeff?
I would advise everybody to know what you have. Get that balance sheet updated annually. Get an appraisal. Get with your tax advisor before an event, not at the time or after an event.
Yeah, that's a good challenge.
I would absolutely echo those sentiments. We had a situation where the tax law changed where we had zero payback to the government, and after my predecessor died, it went to 55%. Wow. But because we had spent several years prior doing tax planning, we were ready. We reduced that to 15%. It was manageable. If we had not done the tax planning, had not done the preparation, had the appraisals, we'd have been in trouble. It literally saved the ranch.
That's an incredible story. Kent, what would you add?
I mean, the cold hard truth is that the government will take as much money from you as you let them. So I would encourage you, make a plan, stick to it, work with your tax professional, use those tools that are available, and deliver that benefit to your family.
It's a sober conversation, but an important one as we think about the sustainability of family farming and ranching operations all across this great land. So thank you for coming and tackling this sometimes difficult, but all the time important conversation. If you want to keep up to date with all the issues facing cattle producers, a good place to go for the latest information is NCBA's website. While you're there, you should also consider becoming a member. Just call 866-233-3872, or you can go to the website ncba.org to join. Be sure to use the code C2C for a special offer just for our viewers. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Again, thanks to our panel, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week right here on RFD TV.